Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. It's Kim here. And today, have you noticed the lighting? It's nice and bright in here. It's because I'm using my new lamp that I picked up at the thrift shop. And on my desk, I have pieces of that wedding dress. The wedding dress that I bought, and if you go back to my Thrifty Canucks video that's just before this, you will see the whole dress and hear the story about the dress. So I bought it because of this lace overlay. It has these beautiful appliques. They're kind of, it's really hard to see. It's like little tiny plasticky type beads. It's like an embossed over top of the tulle. And then there's a little bit of glittery gold. It's glitter. It's just glued on, I guess. Same with these they're little balls. They're almost like those miniature beads that had no hole that you use for decorating, sort of like that, but they're more of a plasticky feel to it, or kind of a rubbery feel to it. It's not quite the same, but similar. But I bought the dress for this reason. And so I took the dress apart. I've already folded up one huge panel to put away in case I want a larger piece where, maybe I'm using it over a book cover or another project completely. And then there was three panels, one really large one and then two narrower ones. And so I've taken them apart that I will keep the whole flowers intact. I will cut around them as I go along. But all of these pieces that are half pieces and part pieces, I use all of these little bits like this. So I'm not going to take this one apart because I have one started already. But yeah, so I keep these for doing embellishing. And so the large panel will be kept for bigger projects that I would cut into as I go along. And the two smaller panels will be cut up into individual pieces. No matter what, they will get cut up eventually. So I'm going to get this out of the way because that was the bottom skirt of the wedding dress. And so here is the top of the wedding dress. Now I'm just going to explain a few things to you. The top had, of course, a zipper in it. And it was so stitched in so many layers upon layers upon layers that I can't salvage the zipper. I couldn't salvage the material beside the zipper. So sometimes I have to say, let it go. And then, so that was the zipper part of the dress. And I think there's two pieces of it here. And then the rest of the bodice had this I think they're called herringbones. All these bone pieces to keep, it's like a corset, with the bones in a corset. And so they are very, very hard plastic. I could try to salvage the plastic, but I don't really have a need for it. And they are, as well, sewn in there several layers that it's nearly impossible to salvage the material around it. I would spend way too much time trying to save a few straggly little bits. So this is the part that I am discarding. It's just a very small amount. There's the rest of the zipper. So it's a very small amount of the garment that is going into the recycling bin. And the rest I salvage, I use every little bit. So I'm just going to get that out of the way now. So when I cut the dress panels, I cut along the seam for the same reason. They do a lot of back stitching and overlay stitching. So it becomes nearly impossible to try to split the seams open to gather every little bit of this fabric. So it's easier to cut the seam right off the two sides, just cut right off of it. And then I undo it. I just take a blade. That's the fastest way for me. It's just something I'm used to doing. Of course, you'd have to take precautions if you're not familiar or are comfortable with working a blade. You may have to just take it apart individually with a seam ripper. But I take these pieces apart because there again, I do use these little bits of this applique that's on here and the tulle. I use it all. And so this becomes what I use for making my snippet rolls, for making clusters, for trimming on the edges of a page. Sometimes I scrunch this up and just sew through it a few times. I just make all kinds of little bits and pieces out of what I have. So that's what I use all this for. So that's the seams on the bottom of the skirt that held the 3 panels together. There was one really large one, which was the back, and then the 2 front panels, which was the front of the dress. And so that's all the seams from that. So slowly that gets used up. So then this was the top. Now I have these purple circles here so that I remind myself to stay in this little section, because the way the camera is set up and with the lighting, I don't have as big a space because the camera's a little bit closer. So I'm just testing this out to see how it's going to work. So this is the first video and you guys get to be the guinea pigs and tell me how you like it. But yeah, so this is the top of the skirt. So you'll see these little purple markers in here until I get used to working just in this space. So this is the top of the skirt, the bodice. And so this was kind of one of the back panels where the zipper was, sort of under the arm. It was sleeveless. So there's the other back panel. So this would have been kind of the back of the dress. It was a size 2. It's tiny. Tiny little thing. So it would have had the zipper in between here, and then it would have had a finishing hem, which was part of that herringbone part, or I think that's what they call it. I can't remember, the corset part. So that was all cut off. So I was left with 2 square pieces, because down here would have been the skirt itself, and then this would also have been finished at the top. It was a strapless dress. Did I say that already? So that's the 2 pieces there. And then these pieces, they were kind of, the fabric was manipulated to gather it up. So this was kind of one side of the front, and then this would have been the other side of the front, even though it's bigger. And it kind of came around like this. If you go and you look at the other video, you'll see that it kind of wrapped around the front of the dress like this. So when I took it apart, these had been stitched in place because it's like an accordion. So these had been stitched in place in spots right to the satin lining. So when I took those stitching out, I have this huge piece here that is now I can use for my snippets and clusters. So I will again choose the full size appliques that are here in full, and I will cut them out and keep those for doing full size things. Maybe I want an overlay, or maybe I want this to be more distinctive. So I, rather than cut it up, unless I run out of what I'm using for snippets. But there's all these little end bits that are incomplete pieces that go along here. Like this isn't a full one, it's not complete, so I will use this in my snippets, and so on. So I probably will end up with 1 or 2 good, there's 2 good leaf pieces on this one, and I think there's maybe 1, not even. So all of this will get used up for snippets as well. Same with these 2. Neither one of these is a full piece, so I will use these up. So that was the front and back of the dress top. And then this was all of the satin pieces that I cut out from the front and back top. And they have a layer of satin, and they have a layer of lining. It's like a cotton lining. And they're all bits and pieces. And white satin, if you take apart a wedding dress, you have satin coming out of your ears. So all these little tiny pieces, again, will get used up for doing snippets. And the full-size pieces, I do put them aside. I have quite a collection because I've taken quite a few dresses apart. So eventually they may all end up being pieces of snippets, or get dyed in different colors and worked with that way. But it does get folded up neatly and put away so that I can use the full-size pieces if I want, and cut them up however I want. Another thing that comes with the dress, look at these tiny little things. Oh my goodness. These were the foam inserts in between the layers of satin and the cotton lining and the lace over top. So technically, like, they were only held with 4 little threads. And yeah, that's all you need for something that size. You don't need much more than that. But why do I keep that? They're made out of foam. They aren't soiled because they were in between the layers. The dress was only worn once. And they probably wore something like a camisole underneath, or something that, again, guarded their body against the lining and against everything else. So they're not worn. I can throw these through the wash. They're made out of foam, but they have been molded into this shape. So they're heat molded into this shape. And what can you use these for? Well, you'll get a good laugh, because you can do this with bras as well. In between the lace layer of a bra and the inside lining of a bra, you often find these very same pieces. So when they wash up, they are great little pieces to use for making fascinator hats. Yeah, nothing like wearing your bra on your head. But yeah, so this is a great way to repurpose these things and use them for making fascinators. And if you've ever made a fascinator, you start gluing some lace and some fabric on top and some trim, and, add a couple of feathers and some beads, and you've got a beautiful little fascinator hat. And nobody has to be the wiser that you're wearing a bra on your head. So that's what I would save these for. I have to wash them, of course, just to be sure. But that's what I would save these for, and use them for that purpose. I don't keep too many of these. Same with shoulder pads. I use shoulder pads for the same reason. I haven't made a fascinator hat in a while, but the day will come where I will need 1 or 2 or 10, and so I will make them for whatever the occasion. But yeah, it's just a good idea to keep a couple of these on hand, because you never know when you have a project where you need to make a hat, and this is a great little base. So that's what I use these for. These will get put away in my stash, but going to the wash first. And then on the inside of the bodice, of course, were all these little ribbons. I never really, I know you're supposed to use them for putting on hangers, but why? I never understood the purpose of these ribbons. They just seem to always be in the way or pulling out of the garment that you have them on. But they are good ribbons to use for, scrappy ribbons. I will put this in the dye box because they're white, and, I like to work with something more than just white. So I will put these in the dye box, and next time I'm doing some colored stuff, that's what I will do. And I have a spot, actually, because I will be doing some dyeing with you very soon. So again, leftover bits. This was the seam between the top of the dress and the bottom of the dress. So this is the whole seam. Because the bottom of the skirt was ruffled, of course, this has a bit of, or not, gathered. It has this ruffling effect to it. But there isn't much to work with here. I did cut it quite close. This part is really, really thick. So most likely what I will do is just take my blade, which, do I have it on the table? I thought I saw it on the table here somewhere. Oh, there it is. I will just take my blade and open up these stitches and take it all apart. Now, is this the correct way to do this? Most of you will say no. And most of you would be terrified to do this. That's up to you. I can't make that decision for you. So my disclaimer is, do it at your own risk. It's not my responsibility to make sure that you are safe. It's up to you to make sure you're safe. So use some common sense. But this is how I take it apart. And these pieces all get used for doing clusters and little bitty bits and pieces that I use in my stuff. And I try not to waste anything. So the only thing I'm wasting at this time is the piece of zipper that was on there, and those plastic bones that go inside the corset of the dress. So all of this will eventually get taken apart, not necessarily today. Also inside were, and I don't understand this either, but there were 8 buttons sewn on the inside of the dress. I don't know why. And they're clear buttons, so they'll just go in my button stash. Will I use them as clear buttons? Probably not, but there's nothing to say that I wouldn't paint them or collage on them or do something with them. It's a possibility, but if not, they're just in my stash at this point until I have a need for them. So there was that. I'll get those out of the way. And then the last thing was the tag of the dress. And this is cachet, I guess. Cachet? I'm not sure. Sachet? It can't be sachet because that's a C, not so. I don't know. That was the name of the designer, and size 2, made in China. But I keep these tags because eventually I'm going to do a sewing or fashion type journal, and I'm going to have a few pages of these tags sewn right into the journal. I've kind of been collecting all the different tags that I've taken off of garments. I have garments from India, from Italy, from France, New York. So I have quite, even ones we know, like, yeah, nothing's coming to mind now. But ones that we know and recognize in our Gap. So those type of things. I have quite a collection, and so it will be fun to actually sew these into a journal eventually and make my fashion journal, which is, I've always talked about the little black dress, but I don't know when it'll ever happen, but someday. So I do keep all of these little bits and pieces. But the pieces that I wanted to show you right now is what I'm going to work with right now to make some basic snippets. Get this out of the way. So in order to make, I think I know where I'm going, I think. So hopefully I won't mess that up, but maybe I should keep it there. I'm just going to make some basic snippets, and I have a bed sheet that I just tear ribbons off for whatever purpose. Sometimes I use it to wrap gifts. Sometimes I use it for lining. And then when I run out of one sheet, I start another one. And a lot of times these are sheets I pick up at the thrift shop, and they're $1 or $2. They're single sheets. I look for light colors that I really don't worry about the pattern or anything, because I'm using it as a base. But if you don't have a bed sheet and you can't take one off the bed, which I always say this is the alternative. Not everybody agrees with me on that one. But if you don't have a bed sheet, a piece of any kind of cotton, or even an old shirt, or even part of the garment itself, the lining could be used as a strip to make your snippets from. And so I use whatever I have, and I wanted to have the different layered options. So I'm not, I just tore off a piece, and I'm sure you've got things that you could work with as well. When I do these, I do use my sewing machine, and I do stitch everything down. But to get started, yeah, I might use some of this cotton. I don't want it to be solid pieces. I just cut up sort of like what we do when we're doing a masterboard collage kind of thing. And I will lay this down here, and maybe this on top here. Another one. It doesn't have to be matching and lined right up. Actually, I think I'm going to move it down a little bit. And I'm going to add some of this over here. And then this one here. So you can see where I'm going with this, right? Now, I work sometimes in short pieces like this because you don't need to make a snippet roll any particular length. I mean, if you wanted to roll it up, then you could certainly stitch two pieces together or work on a longer piece. These are going to be pieces, because it's white on white, these are going to be pieces that I use for dyeing purposes, so that I can change up the colors a little bit. I'll tuck that under there. And I'm just going to work with another small piece here. I don't care if it's rough. You are not going to see half of that when I'm done. I'll put that one down there. And I know there was more of this lining, so I'll take some more of this lining. And all I've done is kind of filled in the gaps. You can still see the bed sheet a little bit underneath, but it is white on white, so it really doesn't matter. And there's a little space here that I can add a little bit of this strip down here. And if I were desperate for pieces, I would start adding these things in as well. And I can still add this on top. It just gives a little bit more dimension. And my snippets are meant to look raggy. I don't want them to be perfect. And I've made perfect ones as well, where everything is nice and lined up and edges are hemmed, and but I don't care for that look. I really prefer the shabby, messy pieces hanging off, that kind of look. And I'm going to add one more piece over here. And so this is the basics to my snippet. Let's see, I'm going to add one more piece of satin across the top there. This is the basics. That's how I'm starting. So now I'm just going to take my glue stick, if I can find it on the table here. Just one of these. And I'm going to lift this up. Now you could pin this if you want. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue to hold it in place. Now this one I've got 3 layers because I have that little scrappy bit there. And all I want to do is just hold it in place so that I can take this to my sewing machine. And know that it's all going to hold. Basically, I mean, there's going to be rough edges. I'm going to do this one next. You can do this with your white glue, with your fabric tack. I just tuck these down enough to, again, hold it in place. Now this might go a little bit off camera, but okay, so then I've got that straggly bit there on top. And a little bit more here, so just put this here. Now if you were to look up close at this piece that I added on, you will see that there are lots of strings, and I'll show you that in a second. I'm just going to put a little glue on that one and a little bit on that one. So I don't care if it goes over the edge. Those are things that can be trimmed after if I find it's interfering with what I'm doing. And so I'm going to take this to my sewing machine as soon as it's dry and just basically run maybe 3 rows of stitching to hold it down. I'm not looking to get every little edge. I don't care if there's little flippy bits because we aren't done by any means. So all I'm doing is maybe a row this way, then come back this way down the center, and then back up this way. A little bit of zigzag, a little bit of straight stitch, because again, it just adds interest, especially if I'm dyeing these things, and then you can see the stitches because the cotton takes on a different, the cotton threads take on a different color when you dye them compared to the fabrics, and depending on the fabrics you're using. So that is how I start my base. So I'm going to stop the camera and I'm going to go and stitch this down, and I will be right back, but you won't even notice. Okay, I am back. All right, so I have stitched down my fabric pieces. In fact, after I turned the camera off, I did a bunch more. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at this stage. I'll just put this aside for now. These ones. And so here is my piece. Now, if you remember, I added this long little shabby strip on there, and I forgot to show you there. There are lots of loose little thready things sticking around, and there's a few threads here that from the side of the bed sheet. And yeah, my pieces are sticking up. They're not completely stitched down. That's okay. There's probably some puckers in here. That's okay. By the time I'm finished, you're not going to see them. And by the time I'm finished, if there is a pucker left or there's something that doesn't look right, you can still add a button, a bead, a sequin, some trim, some lace, anything to cover it up. It's not that crucial. So to make your snippet rolls, don't get caught up on making, everything perfect and everything stitched down perfectly, because that can be something that you can adjust as you go along, especially if you're going to be cutting these up. You may have to go and do some back stitching on them or some hand stitching, but that's all part and parcel of what we do and part of the fun. I'm showing you this white on white, and it's probably not the greatest color to show you, if you're just starting out and you want to learn how to make these, because sometimes having a little bit of contrast or different fabrics makes it a little bit more visual and easier to see. And I will do more. I promise I will do more. But the reason I'm doing this is because after I turned off the camera after my Thrifty Canucks video, I was waiting for the video to upload, and I started taking apart the dress. Because for me, I always like to use up my time the best I can. And so sometimes, if I'm uploading a video or working on videos, sometimes I watch other videos. Sometimes I use that time to put things away. Or sometimes I use it for stitching, all kinds of things. And in this case, with the Thrifty Canucks video, I used it to cut up the dress. And since I had all these pieces out, I knew right away that I wanted to start some snippets just to get rid of all of this, because this stuff can pile up really quickly if you don't handle it well and get it done. So I figured, you know what, I'm just going to put the piles together, and then next video I do will be to show you these. So I will come back and do other snippet rolls where I use some of my scrappy bits and leftover fabric bits and stuff, where there's more contrast and more different patterns and stuff that you can see it a little bit better. But I'm sure you can get the gist of what I'm doing here. So because I only have the two fabrics and I don't have much as far as like texture going on, that you can see. I mean, it's just plain cotton fabric under here and this satin. So that's where I bring in other things. And I just brought some scrappy bits of lace that I had here. So I'm going to start adding things like pieces of lace on top. But I don't want to completely cover it. I want the satin to show through. I want you to see the shabbiness of all of this. And so I'm going to put a piece here and there, and I'm going to use more than one different thing here. So I'm going to add one there. Like I said, I want you to see the ugly parts, the nice parts. I want you to see it all. I have a little piece of this crocheted doily that I'm going to lay down here somewhere. Let's see, I'm going to just put it right there. And then there's more of this doily here, and this was a horrible doily. There is some staining, there's some leftover bits, but because these pieces are going to get dyed after, I don't worry about the staining. So I'm just gonna, and this doily, I didn't like this doily because all of these look like carrots to me. That's all I could see was these carrots. So I'm going to use these carrots up today in my snippet, but I won't make them look so carroty. Although it is Easter, isn't it? So I'm going to add that there. And I'm going to just take another piece of that doily and add that there. Not worrying about what it looks like or how much space I've filled in. It's just to add a little bit more texture. Now I've got this piece of lace here, and I guess I had been cutting off of it. So I like this little trimmy bit here. So that could go right where I had the trim. Actually, I'll put it on top of there. So we'll move this over a little bit. and then maybe some of the lace itself. So I'll keep going with adding some of this lace on here. And that's starting to look pretty good. Maybe I'll just add one more piece here to match up with that one. Maybe there. And do I worry about it going over the edges? No. I can always trim it off if I don't like it. So this is my next level. Now I could use my glue stick, but it's going to get a little bit harder because, well, maybe I should add something there yet too. One more piece of that doily. Let's see, let's go for this piece here. So I don't measure, I just cut stuff and start to fill it in, knowing that I still want the satin to show through a little bit. I want you to see a bit of the base, and it's just to create some dimension and texture and, you know, a visual difference. But because now I'm adding these pieces on top of all of these other pieces that are on here, it's a little harder to do with the glue stick. So I'm going to use my white glue to hold these down, but it's, again, not enough to make a huge difference. I don't know if my glue is open here. Okay, I just have to take my pen. I haven't used my glue for a while, I think. There we go. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue in a couple of spots if I can get this to start. Sorry, everyone. Sometimes. Now I've got thread in here. And you can also base stitch this down if you don't want to glue them. I'm gluing because I'm going to do a few pieces at once. Here we go. Now we're starting. So by the time I'm ready to stitch these the next round, these will be dry. And then same with this one. I'm just going to now lift this up so I don't have to move it around too much. And put a few dots of glue just to hold it in place. I used to glue all this stuff down, and then in the end I was still, you know, trying to stitch all these little bits and pieces down, and it's like, well, why bother to glue it all down anyway when you're still going to be sewing it? And apply a little bit of glue there to hold the edges. And then onto this next crochet piece. And I'm not putting much glue, just enough to tack it again so that I can sew through this. I don't worry if it lifts up. Usually, if I'm by myself, I may even pin it, or sometimes I bring this stuff all to the sewing machine at one time, and I just sew as I go. So this is a, you know, I do this method as well, but I don't do this method all the time. Sometimes I take all the scraps, or I cut it up at the sewing machine and sew as I go. It's whatever works at the time. Now I know you can't really see much of the glue that I'm putting on here. That's okay. It's just white glue, and I'm just putting a few dots. And this doily, as I said, has some stains in it. It still looks like a carrot, doesn't it? I hope it doesn't stay like that forever. Yeah, it has, the doily has stains on it, and I think even this piece of lace here is a bit of a different color. But once I start dyeing this, which is what I plan to do in my next video, is to show you some dyeing methods. Actually, maybe not the next video, it'll be one of the videos after that, because I have another project before that. So just gluing this down in place. And you can see, even just by putting the lace down, I'm already kind of holding the pieces of fabric that aren't glued down. I'm just holding them in place with the overlap of this next piece that's going on top. So that helps to hold it for sewing as well. And I know you can't see this gluing part. Sorry, it would be more visible if I was doing the colors. And now this piece, because I took it off. Hopefully I'm in camera here. I had to take my camera down for a second. I had a phone call. It's so weird when you're working and all of a sudden you get a phone call on your phone and it's above your head. It's still the strangest feeling to me. It's like, what's ringing? What's ringing? Okay, and just adding that in there. Now I'm just going to put a little glue to hold this stringy bit. And then these last two pieces. Now this is not going to look like much until, of course, when they're dyed. Then you'll see the different layers a lot more, because each type of fabric takes on its own color when it's dyed. They're not necessarily the same, because there's cottons, there's synthetics, so they will all look different when the color is added onto it. And this last little piece here. And adding that on top. And there's this one little spot sticking up here that I'm just going to put a little bit of glue. Now you really can't use your hot glue on here if you're going to sew, because that will break needles and jam up your machine, which is why I'm using the white glue. But I do have to let this dry, so I won't be able to show you my stitching until after I've dried it. So I'm not 100% that it'll actually get finished on this video. It might have to get finished on the next video. So then I was talking about these different appliques that I had and the tulle. And this is I'm going to take some of the smaller little bits first. Yeah, stuff like this I'm going to take. So this is where I would just take my scissors and trim this out. And I'm going to take a couple pieces here. Okay, there's another one here. Now I will still go back and use all of this, the tulle that's in between all these pieces. So actually I'm going to cut some of this off now and use it. And this is what I use to start embellishing and enhancing these pieces even more. So this has still got some threads on here I'm going to take off. So let's start right at the end, because we've got a straight edge, so that's kind of fun. So I'm going to now take my glue and glue this one down over top. So just run a bead of glue there to catch this so that it's Now this is, again, only tacking in place, and some don't take well to the glue, which might be in this case, this piece here in particular. That's okay, because I have my pins here. Some things just don't glue well. And so I'm going to pin it in place here. Because I've already glued those other pieces down. And that's enough to hold it in going to the sewing machine. And so when I go to sew this now, I will probably work all in one direction, only because I will start to follow and take the pins out as I go along. So I would run a row of stitching down this way, and then go down the middle, because I won't have a pin there, but most of it will be already at least basically stitched down. And then I will go on this side, taking the pins out on that side. So that is how I would now glue this part on. So since this, I already know this doesn't work. So I'm kind of going now in between some of the other layers. Now this one, I'm just going to peel that crochet doily. Well, maybe no, I'll just go right over it. Some stuff you have to make up as you go along, because every piece is different. And then I'm going to pin it from the other side as well. So these are just the little accent pieces. And there's another little scrappy bit here with a couple of threads on it. Because that one didn't go quite as far, I'm going to put it right there. Do you ever have your fingers cramp up on you when you're doing something and they kind of do like this? If you don't, it'll happen. Okay, so I've got that stitch there, I think, or pin there. I'm going to probably do one more. And I don't care if it goes over. That's part of the design. I will trim it as I go afterwards if it looks too wonky. But it depends on how these get finished after. So you can start to see that it's coming together. Now this piece here, I think I will save this for clusters, which I will get to eventually. So let's find another piece that I can take off of here. Maybe we're going to have to go with just using up one of these great big pieces. So first I'm just going to get it away from the, I hope I'm in camera, away from the whole fabric piece. I'll close up my glue because I know that this isn't going to work on this tool. So this one was one of those pieces that was gathered a little bit. I'm just going to trim back this netting here. All of this stuff gets used up. So taking a little piece of that now, I'm going to add that in here. And you can see how we are building up this little bit of color now. And this finishing using the appliques. And this is where I like to save these appliques. Now, I've covered up way too much of this doily. So I think I'm going to trim this back a little bit so that it's not covering the doily. Because we want the carrot to show, right? So again, I'm just adding this now in between these other lace pieces. So you've got a little bit more texture going on and a little bit of color coming through now, which is how I would do this if I was doing a colored one as well. And this is quite a large piece. I'm just going to cut it in half. It's got a straight edge, so I'll run the straight edge along the edge here. I hope you can see all this. I hope it's... coming together. Now, I really like this lace, but I kind of glued it right down. So I think I'm just going to have to go over it. And again, I'm going to follow my straight edge here and fit that in over top. But it's too close to that one, so I'll just bring it a little bit over. Now, some of you were horrified when you watched me chopping up the satin, thinking that what a mess, right? That I didn't cut it very straight. I'm going to pin this here. Actually, I'm going to pin it this way because that'll be when I'm doing the center stitching. But how much of that jaggedy edge can you see on my original pieces? Very little. And by the time I'm finished, not at all. So don't get caught up in making perfect squared pieces. Just chop and go. And the next thing you know, you will have a beautiful piece to work with. And you didn't have to follow the lines. So this one now I'm going to run across here a little bit along the edge. And everything is different. Like sometimes I would go right across the whole piece. It depends on what you're putting over top and how much color you want to go through or how much of a finish you want. But I always tend to want to add something glittery on the last pieces that I put down. So I start out with my base fabric to give it strength and the original background colors. So, you know, maybe I was working with orange and yellow and brown. I would use orange and yellow and brown fabrics underneath. And then I would do a lace overlay, and maybe the orange and yellow and brown fabrics were patterned or had more texture to them, or you know, they were different types of fabric. So that in itself would create some interest. And then the next thing I would put would be my lace overlay or doilies or trims. You know, sometimes you have some nice braided trims. You can use any of those things on top. And then I like to finish with sort of a tulle or a cheesecloth or something, and with a little bit of glitter, because the rest of the glitter you can add in afterwards. But that's just me. Now, if I were doing this without glitter, then I would probably focus more on the doilies and the lace and the trims, and maybe add some silk flowers as a little accent on top. But for the most part, I love my glitter and glittery blingy pieces. So this is what I'm adding on top. So usually the tulle is my last fabric that I put on top. And it doesn't have to be tulle. It could be any kind of a mesh or trim that, you know, is fancier, or it could just be a piece of ribbon. It could be a piece of glittery gold ribbon or something that I add afterwards. But that is kind of the accent that I put on top as I go along. So I really want something here. So I think I cut everything up on that one piece. No, I still have some here. This is kind of nice because it's got this scroll feathery look to it right there. So how to use it on here, I think I'll go this way. Now this will overlap a little bit over there. You know, I actually don't mind if it overlaps a little bit. Okay, so that's how I'm going to put this one down. And the only reason I didn't glue this layer over top was because it didn't glue well, and so pinning it in place is fine. And here again, you know, now that I've added this on top, you really can't even see the lace that's underneath here. So it's just these little textured bits that you see here and there poking out. So don't, again, use your best of the best when you're making snippets, because sometimes by the time you're done, you're not going to see any of it. So I'm not concerned. To me, there's a little bit of empty spaces in here, but that's where the embellishing comes in. And I won't go into the embellishing this time around because I will be dyeing these first, and then I will decide on my embellishments later. However, I could do some of these where I put some silk flower pieces. I probably won't show you that today because I'd have to go and dig them out. Something I just came up with now. But if I have some white silk flowers, I would use those in here now, stitched down, and then this way when I color it, they'll be again colors that work together all together. But this is how I'm now going to go back to my sewing machine and stitch all of this down. And I'm going to leave this like this. So I'm going to end this video now because you don't need to see this stitched down. Well, maybe I could. I'll stop the camera and I will go stitch it and come right back. Okay. Okay, there we go. I am stitched down. So now I have everything basically stitched down. And yes, there are little lifty bits. There are little things sticking up. This piece here is sticking up. I don't worry about that because I am going to first dye these and then I'm going to start the embellishing. And the embellishing you will see after I've done the dyeing in another video. So I will finish the rest of these and use all of this stuff up in the same manner, going with the crochet doilies and little bits of lace and trims, and then adding these little glittery bits until I've used everything up. And I still have, even though I've done 5 strips, which, you know, you can see where we're at here, I still have to do these ones. I still have a few pieces here of the satin left. This is just the top. So I'm going to put this aside. And I will now take this. I don't think I need these little purple things anymore. I will take this and I will cut these into strips and chunks. Just like that. You know, some can be smaller. This one is a little bit too raggy. I'll take that off. So you can see I have 5 pieces here. I'm going to leave that one long. Sometimes I like long ones. And then going into my lace pile. Now this is a gathered piece of lace, so I'm just going to trim off that little bit. It's not to say I won't use it on something, because I do use all this stuff up. I'll just take it off there in the pile. And let's see, I'm going to add this on top of here. And this one on top like that. And let's cut a couple more pieces. And that's going on there. This one's a nice chunk to go there. I've got some more of that doily. Where is it? Here it is. Oh, I've got this lace too. Let's take a piece of that lace and add it there. Let's add one more piece here. It's a little different piece. And now I'm going to take some of this doily. Oh, look at that, another carrot. I think I'm going to cut this off so it looks less carroty. And same with that piece. Okay, I'm going to put it there. And this is a longer trim piece, so I'm going to add that on top of there. And now this is glued down. And where'd my doily go? Here it is. Oh, I'll be so glad when these carrots are gone. I like straggly bits that hang down. So there is no measuring. There is no, you know, I just kind of go with approximate until it's filled in. Let's take another carrot here. But I'm going to cut that off. I don't know, were they supposed to be pineapples? Because they're pretty thin pineapples if they were supposed to be some type of pineapple. But I'm just adding that into that piece there. And I thought I got more doily, but I guess I did. Oh, here's another little piece of this. Okay, another carrot. Okay, and now these are these little scrappy bits. Remember these that I showed you are just the seams? So this is a bigger piece. I'm going to just take that and run that right across there. Now this should open up. I think it's open. And I do save those tool pieces, which you will see. When I'm completely done everything, I will show you all of the finished pieces. But a little bit there. Now, I think in this case, I want the doily to be on a little bit more on top, so you see the doily. And here, I'm going to use it to hold those two pieces in place. So it's just giving you a little bit of glitter. Actually, you know what? I don't like the doily. I don't like all I see is a carrot. And so, so I'm going to put that on top. And then even these threads, I do use them in projects. Now this has got a little piece of lace on it too. Now I'm just going to, this will have to get added on afterwards, but there is a little bird nest. So once I get all of this part done, I can add this onto one of these pieces here as a little bird nest and put 3 pearls in it. But this I will have to show you a little bit separately as well. So I don't throw those out until I've made the final decision how I'm going to use them. But now this has a long strip of this glittery gold piece. So that can go along here now. And then we've got 2 more. Now this isn't cut yet. Or I mean, it's still the seam is still put together. So I'm going to work with a little bit more of this until I open those up. So in this case, I want a pretty substantial piece. These little, the little plastic balls that are on here are all over my machine, all over. It's very staticky. I don't want quite that much. It's just the glitter that I'm picking up on here. Yeah, they're very staticky, so they're all over my sewing machine right now. I'm going to have to take the vacuum to it. I'm sure it's getting caught in my machine, or it will get clogged in my machine. But I don't let that stop me. I will unclog it as I need to. So going back now, taking this piece, I think I will add that there. So now all of these I will take to my sewing machine. And because they're one on top of the other, it's not like doing the snippet where you're spreading them out. I will just pin them all together and take them to my sewing machine and stitch them down. Now this moved over a little bit on me here. Now, once it's stitched, I'm just going to do one row of stitching down the center so that they're all attached. I will trim off these little ugly bits that are here showing out of the bottom. And once it's stitched right across the whole section, I will just leave this sitting like this for when I go to dye them. And then once they're dyed, then I will take beads and sequins and pearls and trim and add that into here, flowers, any kind of little embellishment, maybe a charm, maybe a safety pin. These will be things that I will use afterwards, but that's how this is going to the sewing machine, and that's how I make these little lace clusters and scrappy bits that go, you know, I use them on the edges of pockets. I use them on to be a tab on something. So I might use stitch this whole piece, trim off this excess, and then cut it in half, and then make myself 2 little tabs. So these are the pieces that I do, but I want to color all of these with dye. So when you see these next, it'll be when I'm doing a session of dyeing, which will be coming up very soon. Not this next video, but the video after. So I will have all of this used up. This will be the entire bodice will be used up to make these types of things. And it's still, you know, probably some of you are going, oh my gosh, that doesn't look like anything I would like to make. But I promise you, by the time I'm finished, they're going to be beautiful. And, you know, I'm not tooting my own horn, but it's just, it doesn't take much to make these into something fun to use for your journals. And you see what I'm using. It's the scrappy bits that you would probably throw away. And I'm just going to run it through the machine, and they will sit like that until I'm ready to use them. And even when I color them, I may not necessarily, you know, right away embellish them. I will on the camera to show you a few of them when they're done. But I will leave them sitting in, you know, they'll be colored in whatever color I use, whether it's like mint green or a light pink or yellow. And then when I actually want to go and use this on a project, it's just one color. With a little bit of gold. So that is where it will come into the project that I'm using as to how I accent. So if I'm working in something with yellows and greens, I can add some green stuff on here to embellish, or I can add purple to embellish if that's the colors that I'm working with. But that's how I start my snippets. And normally I would not use white on white snippets. Very seldom. I don't do a lot of the vintage white stuff, you know, very, very seldom. But this is how I start them and dye them in the colors that I want. And some of these could be vibrant colors like purple or deep teal blue or reds and yellows, so or oranges. So that is how these sit until I'm ready to do some dyeing. And so I throw all this stuff in a pile, and you know, including the snippets, and then they all get dyed, and then they get dyed in groupings and color combinations so that I can use them for a project. So I hope that was enough to give you just some basics. I will be doing more snippets and clusters to show you how I use this stuff up, because for me it's a constant process of getting her done and moving on to the next project. And as much as possible, I like to not have any leftovers or waste, because that's what ends up, you know, in the landfill if it goes to waste, or if it doesn't get used up, then it goes in a bag and it ends up in my pile, and I never see it again because I keep adding things on top of the pile. So for me, the motto is kind of get her done and get it gone. And so that seems to be working lately, except that it takes a little bit longer to do. So that's it. That's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this. I wish you all a very creative day and a creative week, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye for now.